How I got my first Airbnb with less than $5,000. A lot of people have been told that starting an Airbnb business requires a lot of capital, but that's not totally true. I'm James Murphy, and over the past 6 years, I've built a global short-term rental business, launching over 500 properties, and we've generated over $25 million in bookings across 4 continents. My journey started back when I was working as a pastor, just trying to find smart ways to bring in some extra income whilst working with a pretty tight budget. If you're looking at your finances right now and thinking, how do I even get started with real estate investing? I've been there and I know exactly how it feels. But here's the thing, there's a back door into short-term rental properties and Airbnb investing that most people don't even talk about online. So in the next few minutes, I'll show you how to get your first Airbnb property, even if you're starting from zero. The hack to get you started, the co-hosting strategy. Here's the truth. You don't need to own properties to profit from them. And I know it might not seem possible at first, but I want to introduce you to a strategy called co-hosting. Here's how it works. Instead of renting a property yourself to list on Airbnb, you partner with someone who already owns a property and you help them to manage their Airbnb listing. And yes, it's that simple. Imagine a property owner who is either too busy or doesn't know how to manage their Airbnb listing effectively. In fact, this would be the vast majority of landlords. People often say to me, if they understand that they can make more money on Airbnb and they're not going to do it themselves, well, they don't even manage the long-term tenants themselves. So why would they take even more work on? The reality is, it's far too much hassle for them. If they are managing the Airbnb themselves, the likelihood is it will be underperforming because it's highly likely they do not have the knowledge or expertise to do it to the top of the industry. For example, I did a live masterclass just a few days ago, and a lady reached out to me who owns 6 properties, and all 6 of the properties are listed on Airbnb, but only performing at 5% occupancy. I've never ever heard of this before or seen this before in over 6 years of operating across this industry. The fact of the matter is, this person could probably achieve 60 to 80% occupancy, but is just doing it all wrong. This lady has come to me desperate for my help to turn this scenario around. And so this is exactly what I'm talking about. As a co-host, you can step in and offer your expertise to manage things like listing optimization, marketing, guest communication, pricing strategies, and even coordinating the cleaning. Your profit comes from an agreed upon percentage of the booking revenue generated by that property. So instead of the difference between your costs of rent and utilities and the booking income generating the profit, in this scenario, your earnings are a share of the owner's total Airbnb income, earned by providing value management services. For example, if the total revenue was $10,000 per month and you charged a 20% revenue share, you would get a $2,000 fee on average per month. And of course, anyone who tells you this is super easy, now go make yourself rich by tomorrow, they're flat out lying. It's just not true. There's a lot of nuance and things you must get right first. But the business model itself is actually that simple. So let's take a further look into this. All right, so you're probably thinking, the co-hosting method sounds great and all, but is it really that cheap to start? What are the hidden costs? Well, let's dive into why co-hosting can be an amazing entry point into the world of Airbnb, especially if you're looking to start with minimal investment. And it can then train you up so when you're ready to take on your own rent-to-rent, you're already an expert. Here are some key advantages of the co-hosting method. No money down or almost no money down. You see, with co-hosting, you're not typically responsible for security deposits. You're not responsible for the first month's rent. You're not responsible for the ongoing rent or the furnishing costs. The property already exists, owned by someone else. And if they want you to run it as an Airbnb, they're going to pay for it to be furnished as an Airbnb. Your investment is your time and expertise, not your capital. This is often referred to as sweat equity. You might incur minor costs, but the significant financial barriers of getting a property ready are totally removed. Leveraging the owner's furnishings. As mentioned just before, you're working with an existing setup, allowing you to focus on the management and guest experience rather than the initial setup costs. Of course, if the furnishings aren't up to scratch for what would be required to really perform in the Airbnb market, this is another way for you to make money and to earn, because you could come up with an interior design plan and a set of furnishings that would lift the property to the next level and charge a little margin for that service. And then that will transform the property into Airbnb ready, and it will maximize the earnings for the owner, and everyone is happy. This is powerful because you're not furnishing the property, so that $5,000 to $10,000 to $20,000 cost is not your financial burden. So compared to setting up a rental arbitrage property, it is completely the other end of the spectrum. Flexibility without a lease. As a co-host, you don't enter into a long-term lease agreement where you're on the hook for the rent and the costs associated with the property. Now, there will be a management agreement, but that's between you and the landlord for the services that you're providing to the landlord. If the owner decides to stop using Airbnb or the partnership isn't really working out, you're not tied to a lease. There'll be some rules around the management agreement that you put in place and a termination period, but you're not going to be on the hook for thousands of dollars. This lack of upfront commitments and ongoing rental payments significantly lowers your financial risk. Think about it. You're entering the Airbnb space by offering a valuable service, utilizing an existing asset, and getting paid a percentage of the revenue generated, all without the hefty upfront costs typically associated with rental arbitrage or the rent-to-rent models. This makes co-hosting an incredibly accessible way to learn the business, build experience, and potentially generate income without the financial risks associated with purchasing or leasing a property. When I was still in debt as a pastor and had to provide for my wife and children, I had to find ways to get very creative to keep growing our portfolio. And that's where the co-hosting method comes from. We did start out with a couple of rental arbitrage or Airbnb arbitrage properties, but then as our portfolio started to scale and our resources were limited, we got creative, we added in the co-hosting method, which allowed us to grow our portfolio, grow our monthly income without having huge investment costs. As Jeff Bezos, Amazon's ex-CEO, would say, limitation breeds resourcefulness. The best part is that once you've proven your ability to manage one listing successfully, the co-hosting model is totally scalable. You can potentially partner with multiple property owners managing several listings simultaneously, and actually, there's this story I love that just came to mind. Mush and Jasmine from my community, they asked us for guidance last year because they'd started with the co-hosting method with minimal capital, but they had a great work ethic and a strong reason why they wanted to make Airbnb work. They saw how we'd scaled the business, they were inspired by it, and they wanted to scale a significant portfolio despite limited resource. They use this exact method combined with a few other strategies we share in our community, and today they're managing dozens of properties, bringing well over $20,000 a month in net cash flow. It is absolutely incredible. It's staggering what can become possible with the right framework, work ethic, drive, and guidance. Now that you understand the best way to get started with minimum capital, we can explore how to actually find your first property. And let me tell you, with the right strategies, your first profitable property could be just weeks away. How to find your first Airbnb gem with minimal capital. Now it's time to find that perfect property. And no, the biggest breakthroughs aren't on Zillow, Rightmove, Zoopla, realestate.com.au, or any of these well-known property portals. The best gems will mainly be off-market properties. These can be brought to you by agents or by owners, and often it's pre-market or they aren't actively selling, but they can often be open to more creative solutions. So let's jump right into the first strategy for finding these hidden gems to get your first Airbnb property. Leveraging social media. Start by joining local property groups on Facebook and LinkedIn, and make it a habit to spend just 15 to 30 minutes daily browsing and connecting with people. Keep an ear out for posts or conversations where landlords are talking about problem tenants, maintenance headaches, maybe the cost of living crisis squeezing their yield, because this is your inroad to provide a solution to their pain point. These will become golden opportunities. Property investment platforms like Property Tribes and Landlord Zone are also where property owners often share their frustrations and their challenges. It's another goldmine. In a month, you may have more than 12 interesting conversations with landlords that would otherwise have stayed hidden. It might not sound like a lot, but as you start to stack that up, 150 conversations over a whole year, even if only 5% of those conversations went somewhere, we're talking about multiple property acquisitions. And here's a pro tip. Look for properties that have been listed for more than 90 days or have had recent price reductions. Searching specifically for these types of properties, there's going to be more of an openness with these landlords and with these agents because they want to get this property rented, or the agent wants to get the property off their books. Then the second way to find off-market properties is forging professional partnerships. We've already discussed partnering with agents, but there are so many different types of agents and specialisms. For example, those who handle probate sales. You might even want to connect with sales agents and structure a deal where they can essentially place you as a tenant into the property before they even sell the property. So the person that's buying the property is buying the property as an investment with a tenant already in place. This can be a game-changing strategy. Additionally, you can reach out to divorce attorneys or lawyers. You could contact an architect. If an architect is building a building for a landlord, then they're going to have that landlord's contact details. In fact, one of the things we've often done is go into planning portals where the plans have been submitted for new build. And when you go into those planning portals, often you can find the lodgement certificates, and those lodgement certificates will often give you the details for the architect. Then you can call up the architect and you can say to the architect, I'm really interested in a potential acquisition of this property later on once it's finished. Would you be willing to give me the landlord's details? That will spark interest, and you'll probably end up getting put in touch with the landlord because the architect won't want to feel responsible for not passing on that opportunity to the landlord. It could be mortgage brokers, especially those that specialize in investment property mortgages, and they're going to have so many relationships that they can refer to you. So build out this network of key relationships. And then finally, on top of that, you could also attend local property investor meetups. These property meetups can be powerful because even if you don't meet a landlord or an agent that you can connect with on your first attendance, you might meet someone that knows a portfolio landlord or a developer that they can introduce you to. You never know when you're going to come across that $1 million relationship. I call them $1 million relationships because I've made connections with people that have opened up $1 million opportunities. And so I truly believe this is real. Now, when you finally find potential properties, you must forget about acting like an investor. Instead, focus on building genuine relationships. If there's one thing I have to be thankful for, it's my days as a pastor. It's learning that relationships and people matter more than transactions. And when this is in you and you truly believe that, then you will just build seeds of connection, and over time those seeds of connection grow into something meaningful. When you have that mindset and mentality, you're never ever wasting your time. It's not just about trying to find a deal and being so desperate in that pursuit. It's about building long-term relationships. And when you get this right, it's an absolute game changer and it makes everything worthwhile. Now, when you're starting to engage with agents and landlords, have honest conversations about their situations. Find out what their needs are, find out what their challenges are, and see if there's something that you can offer to solve their problem. If they mention their property has been empty, discuss how the ongoing costs might be affecting them. Bring that pain point to the surface, understand their needs, and then you can maybe offer a solution to that scenario. When they talk about being tired of bad tenants, what you're doing is bringing the emotions of maybe what they've experienced with a bad tenant, damaging walls or floors, and as you start to unpackage that, you're able to present your professional Airbnb management solution. Show them how your expertise can solve their problems and create a win-win situation. The problem with most people is they go in with an agenda, and nobody's interested in our agenda. We've got to understand where people are at. We've got to understand the challenges they're facing, and we've got to understand that we're in the problem-solving business. These strategies are all you need to find your first Airbnb property. How do I know this? Because I did this with no experience and have secured hundreds of properties. And every single client that we teach, and we've taught hundreds to do just this, are beginners when they start out. They've never done this before, they have no experience, they have no track record, but they manage to get deals done because relationship is more powerful than experience. It all comes down to mathematics. It comes down to your work ethic. It comes down to going after the no. You're not going to get many yeses to begin with, but every no is a step closer to your yes. And that determination is what will produce the result for you. So as long as you can keep going, you will get a result. Follow this framework and you'll be quietly building an empire with properties nobody else even knows about. Your property sourcing roadmap is now complete, but finding the property is only half the battle. What happens if the property owner wants more reassurance or more proof before committing to partnering with you? Because as I told you at the beginning, this business model can be simple, but make no mistake, you will encounter different challenges. So, in anticipation of those challenges, I've a few creative financing tricks that could transform how you fund your Airbnb portfolio. Extra methods to start your first property for less than $5,000 of your own money. Before we unpack this, just a quick check-in. Are you now starting to see how co-hosting could be your entry into the Airbnb world? It's got such a low barrier, it's an absolute game changer. But what happens if you need some initial support to start as a co-host? Just to make sure you've got a bit in that bank balance to kind of have a comfortable lift off. I've got a couple of choices for these scenarios. Let me show you how leveraging external support and your excellent credit score can accelerate your co-hosting journey. First, let's start with your credit score. And if you've got a good credit score, this can go a long way. Credit worthiness is a powerful asset. So if it's a bad score right now, I would recommend doing some work on improving that credit score. But a good credit score can open doors to financial tools that can support your co-hosting activities without a massive upfront investment. Imagine you need to quickly purchase some small but essential items for a property to enhance their guest experience. Even if you're going to recharge this back to the landlord, you want to make sure you've got balance for that. Perhaps some extra linens, a coffee maker, or smart locks for easier guest check-in. Good credit means you don't have to wait to reinvest in the business. You can start immediately. You can start with funds that don't belong to you. Also, it builds trust and confidence with property owners. A good credit score can be a subtle signal to a potential landlord that you're responsible and trustworthy. If they do a credit check, you're not going to be coming up as a black mark. While it's not directly relating to managing bookings, it speaks to your overall character and how you handle your financial obligations. So your credit isn't just a number. Far too many people don't even know what their credit score is. You need to start paying attention to it and making sure that you're strengthening it. And actually taking on credit in a small way and building it up can be the perfect way to grow your credit score. Leverage is everything in business. Now, of course, we don't want to be building up debt on stupid spending, debt on holidays, debt on cars that depreciate. But if you are leveraging debt to produce income, it's good debt instead of bad debt. Next, let's talk about angel investors. Think of angel investors as individuals with extra capital that they have spare in their bank account, and they're looking to get this capital to work. Whilst those funds are sat in their bank, they're getting a very low interest percentage. And so you can come along and offer them a much better offer in terms of interest on their money if they lend it to you. All you need is a solid plan for scaling your co-hosting business and driving up that monthly revenue through adding additional properties to the portfolio. For example, you can make yourself more attractive by having capacity to manage multiple properties. Maybe a landlord you're working with has another property that you can take on. Or maybe you can offer unique service offerings, things that no one else is doing in the area. Maybe you can invest some of this angel investor finance into a little bit of marketing spend to Google SEO optimize your direct booking website, and where people can find out about your management services, where you can offer to take on their property as a Airbnb property rather than a long-term rental. By doing this, you're going to start to grow your portfolio, start to grow that monthly income, and the spend that you'll put into it from the angel investor or from the credit card is going to be minimal compared to what you can produce in monthly additional income. If you were talking to an angel investor, you want to show them that your business can grow. You can do this by building a little bit of a forecast of what will start to happen as you add additional properties to the portfolio and how that monthly income will grow. Co-hosting businesses or short-term rental management businesses are some of the most sellable businesses in the world because it's a service-based recurring income. So as you start to grow that portfolio, larger short-term rental management companies may want to buy your company, and it can be an attractive EBITDA multiple. Leveraging angel investment or your good credit is all about demonstrating your trustworthiness, because once you've really demonstrated that you can take good care of an investor's money, or you can repay your credit card on time every single month, you can then do it again and do it again and do it again. So your investor base will grow and your credit will grow. This can all help you to grow faster than solely relying on the initial revenue share from just one property. On top of that, as your monthly revenue starts to grow, you're going to be in a position where maybe you can now expand to taking on your own Airbnb arbitrage properties, where you get the lion's share of the profits. And this is a very important reminder. I'm not giving you financial advice here. Always do your own research and check with a trusted financial expert before taking on any debt. At the end of the day, building a successful co-hosting business often involves more than just managing listings. It can involve strategic partnerships and leveraging your existing strengths. Otherwise, many successful entrepreneurs wouldn't have been able to scale their business. Now that you see additional financial and trust-based options can exist for you, you might be wondering if this path is really for you. Well, let me tell you something. A lot of people start where you are right now. They're watching this video, wondering if this could really work for them. And the only difference between those who succeed and stay stuck is their willingness to try. So the big question remains, are you ready to cross the line from observer to action taker? In my experience, your results in life depend on how you answer that question. At this point, you've got the blueprint I wished I had when I first started out, so I could have signed my first Airbnb property much faster with less fear and less trepidation. It's now up to you what you do next. And if you are an action taker who's ready to commit to making things work, changing your circumstances, and ultimately changing your life, I'd love you to click on this video next. It's an entire masterclass to help you get started. I'll see you there.